Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, February 28, 2024, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan on the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Before we do get started, guys, let you know that we do try to pride ourselves being a news organization, which means that we only take sources from the most reputable places with award-winning journalism and research. We do not do sensational news like Fox News, The Blaze, whatever extreme left or extreme right that some people curtail to. We only give you the facts, just the facts, nothing but the facts. But also that said, we do try to watch your language, but I think tonight words are going to fly a little bit. At the same time, the things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So how do we start this? There's no other way to start this except maybe, and I told you so. What I mean by that is it's being told by Biden. Because, guys, what's actually going on right now is that Biden is warning people, specifically Israel, that they're losing international support because, well, they're still pushing against Gaza. For a lot of us who have been very vocal about the Israel-Hamas-Palestinian situation, without violating Zuckerberg, because, you know, those powers that be out there, if you say anything about certain two countries and a certain war that's taken a certain way and gets you banned. But I will always say it like this: check the history, something's wrong. And as we see more protests for free Palestine, well, it's making Israel look bad, as if, you know, Netanyahu actually need any help in that situation. That being said, the president has sat there and spoke with Netanyahu and talked actually about a ceasefire, which he did mention a ceasefire over Gaza is imminent. He didn't say if it was actually going to be 100%. He said that it would be imminent. Now, again, guys, I have been saying this for all those that don't know about this war that's just constantly happening. Please do your research. There's plenty of history out there, plenty of sources out there to where I will sit there and tell you, if you follow the history, you can tell which person's in the wrong. But it's interesting that now President Biden is hoping for a ceasefire because, again, people have been clamoring for him. Certain politicians like Rashid Tlaib have been clamoring for ceasefires. And I think in a presidential nomination election year, I think he's going to listen. But again, I am just surprised that he sat there and said that, considering the fact that we are financially backing Israel. And at the same time, you know how else we can get Israel's attention? Stop treating them like a welfare queen and pull the plug. You'll get Netanyahu's attention very quickly. But again, with the ceasefire happening, we will actually follow that as it comes along. Hopefully we'll be optimistic because, again, follow the history. You'll see that one country's been in the wrong the entire time. And spoiler alert, we've been funding them. Moving right along, guys, I wanted to cover this story as well with Trump because we're going to kind of unfortunately be on Trump for a little while today. I apologize in advance for that. The Manhattan DA, the man you see right there, District Attorney Alvin Bragg, is wanting a gag order on Donald Trump because, keep in mind, Donald Trump has taken a lot of hits, and as he should. Keep in mind that he's already on the hook for $430 million, or Trump Towers is going to be pretty much taken by Letitia James. And of course, now keep in mind, that was the New York attorney. This is now the Manhattan DA going after Trump, basically for hush money cases, you know, his money to Stormy Banks, things of that nature. So anyway, he's basically wanting Trump to basically shut up about it, because if you guys haven't noticed, whenever Trump is actually talking about a case, that's his usual stick. He'll talk about the case. He'll talk about the DA. He'll say everything short. And the district attorney is like, we just want him to shut up because we've seen what happened because the man has a cult. And because the man has a cult, for some odd reason, this cult has been able to find court clerks, DA's information, things of that nature, and harassed them, death threats, things of that nature. So, of course, they want to hold him as a gag order. Now, again, I'm not against that because right now, Trump is having the worst week ever. He's already lost one case. He actually might lose his ability to practice real estate. His real estate actually might be gone in the next 30 days unless he coughs up $430 million. Nobody will sign a bond on him, which I think is completely hilarious. At the same time, he still owes $83 million to a woman, to Jane, who again was sexually assaulted by him. She won her case. So think about this for a second. He already owes $430 million because of, misgivings about his financial holdings. He owes another $83 million in a sexual harassment case that he lost. He's about to lose his Manhattan case. So he's already on the hook for well over $500 million. For a guy that swears up and down he's a billionaire, he's got a cash flow problem. Even more so because this next case going through. And keep in mind, that's just the tip of the iceberg. This man is still under federal indictments and yet going around to rallies and trying to push shoes, which we'll get into momentarily because I have a bone to pick with a certain group of Black people. So, and yes, Kelly, now he wants to ask for immunity. Yes, the Supreme Court is deciding whether or not he can hold immunity from certain cases. You're 100% right about that. It is amazing to me that and again, I'm not trying to be a colorist in any way, but a Black person can do this. He really could not do this at all. And at the same time, he is ducking and dodging cases, especially for the simple fact of the matter, he just won the South Carolina primary, which again, Nikki Haley, I'm sorry, that's not your real name. We're just waiting for you to drop out at this moment because you don't have a shot. I'm sorry. Nikki Haley has sat there and said she's going to stick around till the last person makes a vote. She didn't win. She hasn't won a single primary against Trump. And South Carolina was just last week. I believe Michigan's was just yesterday. And at the same time, I'm sorry. Nikki Haley, that's not your real name, but we need to be honest about something in the Republican Party. They tried this with Tim Scott. Tim Scott, the only Black man in the GOP, tried to run for president. He had no personality, no soul, a talking parrot, and apparently no woman until the very end where he pops up with a engaged white woman and we're supposed to believe it. Right. Of course he had no potential. Then we looked at America's creepiest Christian, Mike Pence. America's creepiest Christian. That alone should have disqualified him from many things. At the same time, he's gone. Vivek Krashamsky, remember that guy? The guy that reminds me of every snake oil salesman, every used car lot that wanted to sell you a lemon. He's gone. So at the same time, guys, it never ceases to amaze me that Nikki Haley is still sticking around. And I'm sorry. I'm all for a woman to be president. I am all for a woman to be in higher areas of office, but Nikki Haley has proved insufficient. At the same time, you're not going to beat a felon that has a literal cult that will do whatever he wants, even give him money for his legal bills. Hello, I made it to an episode. Well, thank you very much, Elizabeth. Really appreciate it. But again, I digress because, like I said, we're going to be a little bit on Trump. I will try to get through this as quickly as possible. I apologize in advance. But speaking of Nikki Haley, again, guys, you know what? I'll give her this because Nikki Haley has made a point about the RNC. Now, for all those who don't know, that's the Republican National Convention. Keep in mind, just 2 weeks ago, I talked about Trump wanting his daughter-in-law to be the head of the RNC, only because the RNC has been paying the legal bills for Trump. Now, Nikki Haley is calling for a vote, a resolution to ensure that the RNC is no longer paying Trump's fees. Now, I'll give her to it. That's smart. It's smart to a certain extent because the RNC has been paying for Trump's fees. Trump has been taking money from his rallies, from certain sales. Like I said, he has a pair of the ugliest shoes this side of Tennessee, and people have been buying them. At the same time, people still buy his MAGA hats. People still buy everything that's on his store. All of that money combined with the RNC is going to his legal bills. That's why I said there and said a long time ago, guys, Anything, if you are a lawyer for Donald Trump, it's Christmas for you right now. The amount of billable hours you are basically tying to this man screams volumes. And I was like, it'll be a nice time to be a lawyer for Donald Trump. You're not going to win any cases, but you'll be paid. I mean, at least for your services. But anyway, going back to Nikki Haley, she wants the RNC to vote on this because basically she wants to cut him off. Because Trump without no money means no case, means no lawyers. No lawyers means guilty verdicts. And if any of those verdicts fall under federal territory, guess what? He's no longer able to run for president. Because that's the big thing, guys, we're trying to get at. If Trump is federally indicted, whether it's his document case, the FBI, whether or not it's his election throwing case in Georgia, and 5 other things that are all federal, not civil, federal. If any of those come up as a guilty indictment, he's done. He can no longer run for president. And again, what other way can you make sure he has no legal tender than to cut off the people that have been paying for him, which I give Nikki Haley credit for. You can't be president, but you kind of have this, if I go down, I'm taking you down with me kind of thing. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. But what'd you say? Kanye has been real quiet about supporting Trump. Oh, yeah, he's got his own problems. Kanye has his own problems, so I expected as much. But yes, Trump's got his own problems, so does Kanye. But at the same time, he might have some bigger problems if Nikki Haley is able to get a vote through the RNC to actually stop paying the legal fees for Donald Trump, which again, never in the history of both parties have you seen so many resources diverted to keeping one man out of prison. It's almost like it's like watching Godfather if Godfather was political. It really is. But there's a reason why I'm talking about Trump, guys, because Trump was at a Black conservative rally. And I'm going to go ahead and say this. I've never understood Black conservatives. I try to keep an open mind about a lot of things, but Black conservative, it sounds like an oxymoron. It really does. Because if you're a Black person, how the frack are you conservative? Every conservative talking point, every conservative memo, every conservative mention goes against people of color, goes against women. So I scratch my head at the next thing I'm about to say. That's very true and what's wild. Yeah. So the next thing I'm about to show, which is a little over 6 minutes, I apologize in advance because yes, Black conservatives do exist. And yes, Trump was at a rally to where he has said some things that are cringeworthy right now. And well, you better off hearing from the man himself.
Courting Black voters, some of whom have started to reconsider their support for President Biden. But Trump's comments on Friday at the Black Conservative Federation Gala in South Carolina is leading to controversy, with some calling the remarks racist. Take a listen.
And a lot of people said that that's why the Black people like me, because they have been hurt so badly and discriminated against. And they actually viewed me as I'm being discriminated against. It's been pretty amazing, but it possibly, I don't know, maybe there's something there.
That was said in front of hundreds of Black conservatives. What was their reaction? We're joined now by 4 Black Republicans who were all in the room. Abdul Ali, Operations Director at Frederick Douglass Foundation of North Carolina. Tia Bess, National Director of Engagement for Moms for Liberty. Kevin McGarry, co-founder of Every Black Life Matters. And Sharice Lane, a student at Florida A&M University. Thank you all so much for joining us. The Federation just responded saying in part, Black Americans are waking up to the reality that the Democratic Party has taken advantage of them, and the media and the party are terrified. Our community supports the policies of President Donald J. Trump and knows full well that life was better 4 years ago under his administration. No amount of media deception or liberal race baiting will sway the minds of Black voters who will cast their ballots this November for safer streets, a better financial well-being, a secure border, and a complete rejection of Joe Biden's disastrous tenure. So you all were all there. A quick show of hands. Do you believe his comments were in any way racist? Nobody. Okay. Abdul, what were your thoughts that night when you heard these comments during the event?
It's about time that somebody started telling the truth. I mean, he's only speaking to what some Black folks have experienced for a very long time, which is a disastrous justice systems in many cases, And ultimately, we can all see this playing out right in front of our very eyes. I wasn't offended or didn't feel like anything he said was racist in any way.
Former President Trump also made a statement about his mugshot taken as part of his Georgia case. Let's take a listen to that.
And you know who embraced it more than anybody else? The black population. It's incredible. You see black people walking around with my mugshot. You know, they do shirts and they sell them for $19 a piece.
Kevin, Tia, I want to bring you in here. Do you feel that that comment was in any way off color?
Not at all. I mean, the reality is that, we see a president that has been prosecuted and persecuted. And a lot of people in the community, especially in the Black community, who have felt that there's multi-tiers of justice are seeing that played out in front of their very eyes. And they're saying, yeah, I can relate to this guy. This guy is going through some things that either myself or my family have gone through. And this is a very relatable moment for a lot of people. So seeing this mugshot as a big, to the media and to the political pundits it's a big deal. And it really does resonate within the community.
Tia, want to get your comments there.
Well, no, I agree, especially coming from an education perspective. He didn't say, if you're not black if you don't vote for me. He was just stating the truth, and that's what sometimes we need to hear. For too long in politics, we've been lied to, and we need to hear the truth and have someone that we can relate to.
Me personally, I don't think that's necessarily relating to blackness, but I do think that a lot of black people have gone through the criminal justice system, and it has been unfair to them. And I think that's what he was saying.
Abdul, you've said that you focus more on Trump's policies than what he actually says. But as we saw when he was president, his words do have tremendous power, even fluctuating in the stock market just minutes after he'd speak. Do you think that his words shouldn't matter?
His words absolutely do matter, and I'm less concerned with something said in jest, and I'm more concerned with the fact that we had a president who actually took on criminal justice reform with the First Step Act. And unlike the Biden administration and the Democrats, he set forth a platinum plan for Black economic empowerment, something we've seen nothing of the sort from the Democrats.
Kevin, your thoughts as far as, do you feel that there have been some policies in the past, well, while he was president for 4 years, that Black people benefited from?
Absolutely. And the number one policy, and the one policy I wish the mainstream media would cover, because it would give you a lot more credibility amongst your average folks, would be the policy that Joe Biden in his 1994 crime bill, when he says, look, we're going to get rid of these racial jungles. We're going to, basically target Black and brown communities for a little $5 piece of crack. Going to send them to prison for 15 to life. And this has been going on. President Trump came in and saw the injustice that was perpetrated on the Black community, especially. It was targeted. And he said, no, we're going to dismantle this.
According to exit polling, former President Trump saw a 5% increase in the Black vote from 2016 to 2020. Tia, I want to bring you back in here. What do you think is driving this increase? What specific Trump policies do you feel have helped Black Americans?
Well, I'll start with myself. I was a Democrat for all my life, my entire family, but it was around COVID time when I started paying attention to policies being made. Like, I started paying attention to, when Trump and other politicians were listening to the parents, the people who really had voices that matter. Because if you look at the media now, no one's paying attention to the parents and what we need. And just because I'm a Black parent doesn't mean that I care less about my child. Doesn't mean that my opinion should not be heard. So there have been a lot of policies that, Trump has been supporting within the parental rights system.
And anyone can answer here, kind of a jump ball. Final question. What do you think about the media response, the noise, and some of the comments made as a result of the controversial remarks, if you will, that Donald Trump said over the weekend? And I'm also curious, is there anything that Donald Trump could say that would stop you all from voting for him?
For me, I would say that it's more so about policy and action instead of just talking. Someone can talk a good game all day. They can appeal to Black voters if they want to, but it's all about policy and what you're doing. that really stands out to me. Like, for instance, there are two big policies that I agree with that he has passed, such as things on school choice. I'm pro-school choice, and I'm also anti-illegal immigration. I think that it does disproportionately affect Black Americans, and I think that a lot of my counterparts would agree with. And I say that because those people are being sent to Black communities. They're being sent to our hoods, our neighborhoods.
Anyone else?
Well, if Trump came out tomorrow and said, I want an unlimited open border, if he came out tomorrow and said he was in favor of late stage abortion, if he came out tomorrow and said he doesn't think Black people have the capacity to succeed in this country, then I wouldn't vote for him. But chances are he won't be saying those things, and chances are I'll be supporting him.
Sharice, Tia, Abdul, Kevin, we thank you so much.
I'm just going to leave that right there for a second. And okay. Woo, okay. How I'm gonna all right. So yeah, let's start there. Okay. Yeah, fuck it. Let's go and do it. Black conservatives are idiots. They are. There is no. My dear God. It was like watching Fox News through a Black lens. Trump literally went to a Black conservative rally and said, I don't see anyone, but I can point out the Black ones. The guy sat there and said, I think I can relate because I've been persecuted too. Really? Trump just went me too, and you guys just said, This makes me wonder, and I've said this before on this podcast, and again, I apologize for the outburst. I apologize for cussing. This is why I say about Black conservatives. If you are Black and you're a conservative and you're still watching this podcast, first of all, thank you for watching. Second of all, you are chasing a paycheck. That's what you're doing. I mean, look at this panel. The panel that we just got through watching. Look at this panel. I'm like, you got one guy up here who says Trump could say anything, everything short of Republican talking points. I'm in. This guy brings up the crime bill because that's Republicans' greatest punching bag against Joe Biden. Well, you know, he was the architect of the 94 crime bill, which both parties under Clinton both approved, and he signed into office. We know. That seems to be the go-to for this guy. Let me not forget, a Black woman who's for Moms for Liberty, literally a Black woman for Moms for Liberty, the whitest Karen organization that might as well be considered a terrorist group. And this woman, who reminds me of Candace Owens right now with blonde hair, is sitting there talking about school choice. You are literally regurgitating everything Moms for Liberty stands for. Oh, we love school choice. Oh, we want to make sure certain books are taken out of libraries. You know, this is the pornographic books, even though those books that we're pointing out are people of color, LGBTQ plus people, and, you know, certain books that don't identify, like Chicken Soup for the Teenage Soul kind of books. And yet, the woman in the lower left-hand corner reminds me of every Karen with a Moms for Liberty shirt right on, talking about, well, Donald Trump supports school choice. School choice, for all those that don't know, is a terrible ass idea that's been designed to attack public education for years. It's happening in Tennessee right now, that they're trying to push school choice by simply taking the funds from public schools and saying, hey, you want your child to go here, here, or here? Here's a voucher. It'll pay for it. But nobody asks where the money comes from. Public schools are affected. And let me get started on the person on the bottom right. This person that, again, well, I'm all for anti-immigration and keeping these illegal immigrants out of Black neighborhoods. Where's your data to back that up? And here's the problem I have with this entire panel. That this man, this Bendejo, this orange POS has literally insulted you. And because the paycheck is nice, you smile and ask for more. I'm gonna be honest with you. And I don't like this word. I hate this word for as long as I can remember. But I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. If Donald Trump called a group of black people niggas, they would sit there and clap. Instead of the appropriate response, beating his ass. But it amazes me so, guys. Amazes me so that you have those individuals. And I talked about this. Biden's problem is that he's going to have a hard time connecting with people of color, with minorities, because right now he needs the minority vote to basically remain nominated as Democratic president. To get the Democratic nomination, he's going to need the minority vote. He's definitely going to need them come election time. But the point I'm making at this is, just like I talked about in the previous podcast, that there are groups out there, conservative groups, who are targeting people of color, who are targeting women and saying, like, again, with the menthol ban, like President Biden wants to ban menthol cigarettes. I have said it many times in this podcast. Who was menthol cigarettes advertised to? Because as an 80s baby growing up, I saw Cools, I saw Joe Camel, I saw Newports. A quick Google search will let you know their target demographic was black people. And yes, a ban on cigarettes is a great thing because, smoking causes emphysema, lung cancer, things of that nature. But let's not forget, for the longest time, just like malt liquor, just like cigarettes, they were targeted at a very specific demographic. It's the same demographic that conservative groups are saying, well, Joe Biden's focusing on this. Why isn't he focusing on lowering prices? Why doesn't he focus on lowering inflation? Why is he not trying to get your wages increased? Because it's distraction. Much like everybody else that says, well, my life was better under Trump. Really? How? Because if we looked at Trump's accomplishments, he cut taxes for the rich. He cut taxes for corporations. He took away deductions for the middle and lower class. He did not increase the minimum wage. He basically sat there. And said, "I think abortion. I think Roe versus Wade should take a second look at it," not realizing that what he may have done was set in motion by overpacking the Supreme Court to what we have now: a destroyed Roe versus Wade and a semi-gutted affirmative action because 4 Asian people felt like they were being discriminated against going into Harvard. All that work, and what did it get you? You still didn't get into Harvard. But you made it companies easy for them to remove certain positions because, let's be honest, companies are scared of 2 things: sexual harassment and affirmative action. And nobody wants to be on the spotlight of hiring somebody or not hiring somebody, simply put, because of the color of their skin. But because they gutted a piece of affirmative action, it's like, we ain't got to worry about that now. You can go. So again, what is that? So what am I getting to about black conservatives? Black conservatives is just that. You guys are out there for the money. And I wish y'all would admit that. I wish you would admit that, because every talking point that panel said can be found on Fox News, can be found on The Blaze, can be found on any conservative news station. All of it completely unfounded or twisted or a straw man's argument. Why? Because they pretty much want to distract you and make it point to, well, life was better under Trump. No, it wasn't. It really wasn't. Trump ran the country like he runs every one of his failed businesses. The only problem is you cannot put the United States of America in Chapter 11 bankruptcy. You can't. So again, black conservatives, you're still watching. I appreciate it, but you're idiots. Anyway, moving right along, guys, I did want to cover this story as well. For the story that don't know about the family of Leonard Cure, a man who literally was shot last year at a traffic stop for no reason. The family had recently filed a $16 million lawsuit. For all those that remember, here's the story. Please be advised, it is definitely graphic.
The Camden County, Georgia Sheriff's Office released body and dash camera videos Wednesday of the traffic stop that ended in the fatal shooting of Leonard Cure. Dash cam footage from the deputy's vehicle shows a brief pursuit of Cure's speeding pickup truck before he pulled over.
Step out! Get out! Get out! Put your hands back here. I ain't doing it. Watch me now. Put your hands on the back of that truck. Either put your hands behind your back or you're getting tased. I'm telling you that right now.
Why am I getting tased?
Because you are under arrest for speeding and reckless driving.
I'm not driving. Nobody was hurt. How was I speeding?
You passed me doing 100 miles an hour.
Okay, so that's a speeding ticket, right?
Sir,
What? Am I going
hands
to jail?
behind your back. Yes, you're going to jail.
Cure refused to put his hands behind his back, and the argument quickly escalated into a physical confrontation after the deputy tased him.
Yep. Yep. Stay down! Stay down!
The confrontation ended with the deputy firing his weapon and fatally injuring Cure.
Camden, shots fired! Shots fired, Camden! Stay down! Do not get up! Stay down!
In April of 2020, Cure was exonerated and released from prison 16 years after being wrongfully convicted for armed robbery in Broward County, according to court documents.
Hey, you look at me. You ain't going no damn where.
The Georgia Bureau of Investigation said it will conduct an independent investigation of Monday's shooting and turn its findings over to the Brunswick Judicial Circuit District Attorney's Office for review.
Yeah. So again, I'm trying to figure out whether the officer was really in danger because he basically escalated a situation that didn't need to be escalating. Anyway, the family, again, for all those who know, Leonard Cure was shot and killed, murdered by police. The family filed on Tuesday a $16 million federal lawsuit against the sheriff's office and the deputy that caused his death. And I have been saying this, but I'm not the first person to say this. What I mean by that is, guys, is just that too many police shootings have happened where the officer was really too easy to go for his gun, especially in situations where it could have been de-escalated. In that case, Mr. Cure. But I have noticed, again, when it comes to police shootings, police are given everything, qualified immunity, time to actually think about the shooting, can speak about other officers but giving their statement. And at the same time, none of it is being done to the person that they've either arrested or killed because, dead people can't really give their side of the story. So what can we do? Families go for the money because that's something that needs to change. And I've been saying this about police reform. I know we had the George Floyd police reform bill that unfortunately America's Uncle Tom, Tim Scott, got killed. But what was interesting in that bill was there was no qualified immunity. Officers had to give their statements during the time of when the shooting occurred. And most importantly, which was I wish they would have added, was that any time, and I say this all the time because you know how most things get stopped if you basically add a financial penalty to it. What I mean by that is, say for instance, a shooting occurred where the officer was at fault. The police pension should be used to pay out to the victims' families. Now, think about what I just said. A police pension to where all law enforcement officers pay into to hopefully be able to cash in at the time of retirement. But let's just say, if police feel like they can get away with murder, aka killing a black person, then why not pay for it financially? For example, if the family of Leonard Cure did win, and let's just say they won their $16 million, that $16 million did come from police pension fund. I guarantee more like that with those awards being done directly from that fund within police shootings. Because that's the only way that you can stop things now. Unfortunately, the way that you stop things is a certain way that you start things, with money. And unfortunately, money may need to be in this case of how those police shootings stop. But at the same time, I am amazed how officers can get away with murder, literally and figuratively. And also another officer that decided to basically have someone perform a sexual act on him, but we'll get to that momentarily. But I didn't get to the heart of the story because we did have to adjust our podcast a little bit because of news that came out today. One of the Republicans' longest serving politicians, Senator Mitch McConnell, has sat there and said in Congress that he will be stepping down at the end of the term. And well, I'm going to let him give his victory lap because I got some bones to pick with this.
Tonight, in a stunning shift for Republicans, the most consequential and controversial Senate leader in modern history announcing he's stepping down.
It's time for the next generation of leadership.
Top Senate Republican Mitch McConnell says he'll give up his leadership position in November after an unprecedented 18 years atop the GOP and retire at the end of his term in 2027. At times, emotional.
I love the Senate. It's been my life.
It comes after the 82-year-old recently suffered 2 freezing episodes in public where he was unable to speak. And he's also faced growing criticism from fellow Republicans who, unlike McConnell, have embraced Republican frontrunner Donald Trump. McConnell served with 7 presidents, becoming a frequent foil for Barack Obama, whose appointment of Merrick Garland for a Supreme Court seat he single-handedly blocked, clearing the way for Trump to appoint Neil Gorsuch, part of the conservative reshaping of the courts, which became his proudest achievement. Later, falling out with Mr. Trump over January 6th, but voting to acquit in his impeachment trial.
President Trump is practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of the day.
The former president has taunted McConnell as a broken-down hack politician.
I don't know that I can work with him.
And mocked his wife, a Trump administration cabinet secretary, as crazy and with racist language. President Biden paying tribute to McConnell today.
Now, I'm going to be honest. If you've been watching my podcast, you already know that I've called Mitch McConnell Moscow Mitch, Turtle Mitch, Factory Reset Mitch, because he has been Factory Reset. We saw it happen.
Our top political,
but it is amazing to me, really and truly, it is amazing to me that Mitch McConnell is given this, we should applaud him. And I thought about that for a second. What has Mitch McConnell really done? And I just want to remind people, especially those, that the senator from Kentucky, who is 82 years old, which is a sudden reminder why we need age limits in Congress, because Congress right now is looking like a retirement home for older people with too much influence and power, that Mitch McConnell, keep in mind, is known for a bevy of things. For example, who can forget this nugget when America elected its first black president, Barack Obama, and Mitch McConnell had this to say.
Our top political priority over the next 2 years should be to deny President Obama a second term.
Yes. Imagine the simple fact of the matter, guys, that, we had our first black president and it was wonderful. It was great. And yet at the time, keep in mind, when President Obama was elected, the Republicans had a majority in the House and the Senate. And what did the top Republicans sit there and say? We are going to make Obama it's our goal to make Obama a one-term president. Keep in mind, again, accomplishments. Well, Mitch McConnell has a history of blocking President Obama because Lord knows you can't let a black man do better than you in Congress.
I was shocked that former President Obama left so many vacancies and didn't try to fill those positions.
I'll tell you why. I was in charge of of what we did the last 2 years of the Obama administration.
I will give you full credit for that.
I think it's safe to say there will not be hearings or votes. I think it is also safe to say the next president, whoever that may be, is going to be the person who chooses the next Supreme Court justice.
Crazy, isn't it? That, again, the man has made a history of blocking things, even more so. And again, I dare somebody, show me one positive thing Mitch McConnell did, and I will show you a man who has a history of blocking things. And the last one I have, remember when the ACA was introduced, along with the fact that Republicans had coined the term Obamacare so much that President Obama at the time decided to say, hey, if you're going to make it my name behind this healthcare, I'm going to run with it. And remember the fear Remember the fear of the ACA, of the Affordable Care Act. Remember Obamacare. Remember the healthcare portal. Remember the whole time people were talking about, oh, there's going to be death squads where people are going to decide whether or not a person gets care or not, and it's going to make costs skyrocket, and jobs are going to get lost and things of that nature. Who was the person usually shouting from the rooftops? Republicans. But when Republicans were pressed about giving their own alternative, Moscow Mitch comes to the rescue again.
The committees of jurisdiction in the House released a proposal to repeal Obamacare and begin the process of replacing it with common sense reforms to preserve access and lower costs. The plan builds upon the 2015 repeal bill, which was vetoed by President Obama. I'm happy to hear the committees will begin consideration this week. I encourage every member to review it because I hope to call it up when we receive it from the House. It's clear to just about everyone that Obamacare is failing. Costs are soaring, choices are diminishing, insurance markets are teetering. It would be easy to just sit back and watch this partisan law collapse under its own weight. Pass the buck to the next guy. That seems to be the Democrat strategy. But Republicans think the middle class actually deserves better. In election after election after election, Americans have called for relief. In election after election, Americans have called for an end to this partisan law. We promised to do both things. We are. The legislation the House introduced last night represents the next step along that path. It's a result of a long conversation with many voices, and it's supported by the one person who can actually sign a bill into law, the President of the United States. I want to recognize everyone for their contributions and hard work. Given last night's announcement, I especially want to commend our colleagues over in the House. The policy conversation that led to what we saw last night continues. The policy process moves forward today. We've come a long way. We've got a lot further to go, but we're making significant progress.
And for all those that don't know, he was talking about repealing Obamacare. Now, keep in mind, this was at a time when they thought they had a shot. For all those that, seem to forget history, Obamacare did actually get passed. The ACA was made into law, and Obamacare actually wound up being lower in costs while actually getting a lot more people on health insurance, regardless of pre-existing conditions, and paying lower premiums. And he's been salty about it ever since. The point I'm getting at here, guys, is just that Mitch McConnell, much like every Republican right now, have no leg to stand on. The man is 82 years old. And has no leg to stand on in Congress. He has no accomplishments. He can only sit there and say that he has blocked Democratic laws, Democratic measures, Democratic choices for AG, for Attorney General, for for Supreme Court justices. That's his legacy. His legacy is that I have blocked everything a Democrat has done. But when he had Trump, he opened the floodgates. Trump actually got more judges appointed through his presidency than any other time as a Democratic president. Any other time a Democratic president administration. Anytime there's been a Democratic administration, nobody can count this. So think about this fact that under Trump, McConnell got through he overloaded the Supreme Court to be overly conservative. He overloaded conservative judges into the Court of Appeals, things like that, in the Ninth Circuit courts. At the same time, he has no laws that he can stand on, no measures he can stand on, except the fact that he can sit there and say that I overload the court for years to come, and it will take another Democratic presidential administration to clean up the mess that I started. And yet, this man is about to get a victory lap out of Congress. Again, I apologize in advance for my language. Fuck Mitch McConnell. Fuck his wife who embezzled from the state. Fuck the idiots that voted him in. Basically, as I'm saying to Mitch McConnell, you got paid for doing nothing. At the same time, you're about to walk out with a government pension to whatever retirement home that you may be in. May you rot in hell. Again, I apologize for my language. But moving right along, guys, with the government, again, facing another spending deficit problem, to where another shutdown has happened, it looks like they've come to a compromise. I'll take what is kicking the can down the road for 500, Alex.
To some breaking news now out of Capitol Hill, because the potential for a shutdown had been the shadow hanging over Washington. The possibility that there could be a partial shutdown come this weekend. Turns out it looks like that will be avoided. There's a caveat, avoided for now. Let me bring in Ryan Nobles, our congressional correspondent. Ryan, it is yet another series of kicking the can down the road to prevent this set of government shutdowns.
Yeah, you're right, Hallie. It is certainly correct to frame it that way, but there is a degree of optimism that they're heading in the right direction, in part because what Speaker Mike Johnson had said at the outset of these negotiations around another short-term spending plan to give them more time to negotiate, that he wanted something in writing that they were ready to pass at least the first tranche of these bills. And the statement that was just released a few minutes ago says that they have made an agreement on that first round, those first 6 departments that will be funded. They just need a little bit more time to dot the I's and cross the T's and give lawmakers enough time to read through the documents. So they are going to pass, likely as soon as tomorrow, another short-term continuing resolution, as it's called, that will extend that first group of funding bills through March 8th, so that they can get those first 6 done by March 8th, and then give them until March 22nd for the stickier issues, those much bigger bills, the much bigger departments that need to be addressed. So just to give you an idea, Hallie, in that first round, we're talking about agriculture, rural development, Food and Drug Administration, transportation, all that group. And then on the 22nd, those are the big items, the Defense Department, financial services, general government, and so on and so forth.
Is this a political win, loss, or draw for House Speaker Johnson?
I think given the challenges that Speaker Johnson is dealing with, this is certainly a win. Now, we may not be able to fully take a look at how this is going to impact him politically until after we see the action on the floor. You know, the conservative base that is kind of giving him a hard time with these budget negotiations hates the idea of short-term spending plans, and they have not they've not approved of the overall top-line spending number that he agreed to with Democrats and Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. So it's very likely that there's going to be a big chunk of House Republicans that are going to vote no when these spending bills actually make their way to the floor. But I think Speaker Johnson also realizes that they were going to vote no matter what. And there was no scenario by which he'd be able to get that group to vote yes and ultimately get these bills passed into law and avoid a government shutdown. So if he's able to navigate this and there isn't a motion to vacate, there isn't a huge outcry from conservative Republicans, then yes, it would be a political win for him. And it would be the most significant accomplishment he's had in his short time as Speaker.
So again, Mike Johnson being the Speaker of the House, I think he's got bigger fish to fry, because keep in mind, guys, this is coming from the same group of Republicans who couldn't find a speaker after removing Kevin McCarthy, voting multiple times, and yet they're mad at Mike Johnson because, again, he was speaking with the president and Democrats. I know this. I never really talk about bipartisan much, but the problem with government spending has always been the same. Republicans want to cut funding from areas. Democrats realize in order to keep everything running, you have to spend more. You basically have two parties going to sit there and play a game of chicken until the very end. Now, keep in mind, government shutdowns don't affect their salaries, don't affect their paychecks, don't affect their benefits. It affects every other government worker, though. But if you're a representative or a senator, you're fine. And I always found that kind of just wrong in so many ways. Because, for example, if you are a government worker and a government shutdown happens, you're cut off. Your job is on furlough. You don't get benefits. You don't get paid. Your ass sitting out in the wind while senator or representative can still go to work. I always thought that the reverse should happen. I used to love the fact that if a government shutdown happens, Republicans and senators lose benefits, lose their paychecks, lose everything because you're working for us, not the other way around. But again, whenever it comes kicking down the can, it's always the same thing until a spending bill is fixed. Even with the fact that they still want to basically fund the wars in Ukraine, still somehow funding Israel, and yet we're now about to get put into another war. Again, America seems to be this war profiteering country. That's all I'm saying. But we will see what happens if this does go through. If it does go through, then yes, America runs for another couple of months. But also another thing that I want people to pay attention to, again, when it comes to dumbass decisions, I know my state of Tennessee in the South have this hold my beer competition that just seems every week somebody tries to one up somebody. But anyway, this week belongs to Alabama. Why? Because Alabama Supreme Court had ruled frozen embryos are children. Now, for all those that don't know, abortion is a very hot subject in the country right now. I have been saying this for the whole entire time, especially with how the Frack We Got Here. We are pro-choice. What a woman does with her body is her own goddamn business. The choices and consequences are ultimately up to her. I got nothing to do with it because, number one, I am not a woman. Number two, again, I have complete autonomy over my body. So why can a woman have the same? Oh, but Will, she's pregnant. It's her body. She has the right of whether or not she wants to give birth to a child or if she wants to abort it. It's her choice. But nobody's thinking about the children. You didn't think about the children when they were born, and you certainly didn't think about the children when they were enlisted in the army or armed forces and they come back fucked up. You certainly are not thinking about the overgrown orphanages that are ran by Christian religious organizations that are denying same-sex parents who want to be parents, but because they don't fall within your religion, they deny them. But you're not talking about that. But you're talking about the so-called baby, which in this case, Alabama did mess up because saying that frozen embryos, are now children. Certain IVF centers are no longer providing those services to parents who are trying to actually conceive. Because again, Alabama has anti-abortion laws. In the event that since IVF treatments are now seen as frozen embryos, are now seen as live children, it falls right under that potential abortion law to where those facilities, including their personnel, can be brought up on charges, including murder. So again, a lot of those facilities have sat there and said, just to be on the safe side, we're closing down. We have to because, well, we don't want to go to jail. So it is amazing to me when this was brought up, Tommy Tuberville and all those idiots in Alabama sat there and said, well, this is going to protect life. How? When you have couples who have paid thousands of dollars for IVF treatments can no longer get them in the state because now you've made IVF centers fearful of prosecution and potential jail time. Way to go, Alabama. Shoot yourselves in the foot and reloading. But something tells me Florida might outdo you next week, possibly Texas, possibly Tennessee. Who knows? But Alabama, this is your week. Bravo. But again, let me get to the other police story that I did have, guys. The ex-police officer, right? This is an officer, James Sadak, who, again, when I tell you the story, when he was a police officer, forced a woman into his car to engage in a sexual act. He sat there on March 15th of 2019. He sat there and told a woman who was walking the street and said something to the gauge of, you can get in the front seat or you can get in the back, which meant to be a threat of arrest. Which again, the woman, because she didn't want to get arrested, got in front seat. Sajak locked the doors, drove to an abandoned lot, and forced her to do a sexual act on him, according to the plea agreement. Now, let's think about this for a second. An officer of the law forced a woman into his car against her will, drove her to a certain area to where they couldn't be seen, and on top of that, decided to force her to do a sexual act on him. You want to know how long this guy got? A year in prison. That's it. He was sentenced Friday to the maximum allowed to the misdemeanor charge under the plea agreement. That alone should scream problems right there. Because again, The reason for the plea agreement, guys, is that they try to say the victim was a sex worker. And because it was a sex worker, they thought, again, that it would be difficult to report the crime to police because she's a sex worker. It is amazing to me that the victim had to sue him in the city to basically get the case settled. He was indicted 2 years ago. But again, this happened in 2019. The man was federally indicted in 2022, got a year in prison on a plea agreement. Now, let's think about what I just said, every action that he just did. He, as a police officer, forced a woman into his car. He took her to an area to where he can be seen and forced her to do an act on him. If that was Diddy, he would be under the jail right now. But at the same time, this officer only gets a year in prison. How? Because I hear forced illegal imprisonment. I see sexual assault. I see abusing your rights as a law enforcement officer. And yet, this former law enforcement officer, because he is former now, is only going to do a year in prison. Please explain to me how that makes sense. I'm just saying, explain to me how it makes sense, because for the simple fact of the matter, this is the reason why so many people are really starting to lean on the fact that the laws need to change. That, again, we talk about Brock Turner, who raped a woman who was unconscious and was supposed to do time in prison, but the judge decided, oh, we're not going to do that because it's going to affect that young man's future. We're now seeing a former law enforcement officer who basically abused his power and abused a sex worker, and at the same time, the slap on the wrist is a year in prison. Make it make sense, because I'm not seeing it. Speaking of things I'm not seeing, I told you guys between Tennessee and Alabama, it's a Hold My Beer contest, although Alabama had won this week. But this story I'm actually talking about as well, because I did talk about this last week, where the Tennessee House legislature is pushing forth a bill that basically says if you were booted from the legislature for behavior and you were reelected back, the law that they're trying to push right now says that if that law is enacted and you were booted out for behavior, that you cannot come back regardless if your constituents had voted you back in. Ultimately, we all know the bill is targeted at. That individual right there, Justin Jones, and the other individual, Justin Pearson. Because between those two and Gloria Benson, those three, the Tennessee three, for all those that don't remember, just last year, where we had brought up the shooting in Tennessee, and the fact that these three individuals were talking about gun reform need to happen in Tennessee. And I keep telling you guys, there's three things you can get in Tennessee that are pretty easy: a driver's license, a firearm, and, well, moonshine. Easy. Because, again, I keep pointing out, it's easy for anyone to get a gun in Tennessee. Not as long as we have gun trade knife shows. They only look at IDs. They don't do background checks. Again, easy to get a gun. It's easy to get a driver's license. Have you ever been to a driver's license testing station in Davidson County? Trust me, not a lot to it. Easy to get a license. At the same time, you had three lawmakers who wanted to change the gun policies in Nashville. And because of the behavior, they say behavior, I say protest, they were booted. Now, technically, two were booted. Pearson and both Justins were booted, but Gloria herself was not booted. Again, Gloria is white, but again, we all know why she stayed. But she's still an ally. Not knocking her for that. But between both Justins, they were elected back to their positions, and they were back in legislative office, which again annoyed Brad Sexton and his group of TN Republicans, who again have no business basically being lawmakers, and now are trying to push a law forward to basically boot out boot out both Johnson and Pearson. And again, I keep bringing this up. I'm sorry, Jones and Pearson is the name I'm looking for. I apologize. And that's the more reason, guys, why I keep saying the entire time that voting is crucial. Because, again, how did we get Mitch McConnell? Because idiots voted. How did we get Bill Lee and every idiot that's running Tennessee legislature right now? People voted for them. Voting is crucial. And again, if you don't like the candidates, you can always run yourself. Again, there's plenty of sites that show you how to run if you want to run for office. But again, no voting or saying that you're not going to vote is about as bad as casting a ballot for the next guy. And as you can see here, that they're trying to push forward through this, and if they get away with it, that means that both Pearson and Jones can be booted, and therefore is a travesty. Because again, they're doing what we asked them to do, which is to challenge the status quo, especially in Tennessee. But Oklahoma, some people, when it comes to certain people, they shouldn't talk. Where I know for a lot of black conservatives right now, they're hoping I'd shut up. But anyway, there's an Oklahoma state senator right now that is letting you know how he feels about the LGBTQ plus community. And again, the LGBTQ plus community, along with minorities and women who make up the majority of voters in the United States. I'm just saying, listen and remember.
Public event. State Senator Tom Woods was joined by other lawmakers, other speakers, other leaders in Oklahoma, and an audience member named Kathy Cott questioned the speakers at that event, including State Senator Tom Woods, about laws in Oklahoma that target people who are LGBTQ+. And what she said, according to an interview she did with CNN, was that she asked, why does the legislature have such an obsession with LGBTQ+ citizens of Oklahoma? She also, as you mentioned, spoke about Nex Benedict's death, again, that non-binary teenager who died the day after a fight at their high school. Senator Tom Woods said that his heart goes out to Benedict's family, and then said this.
We're a Republican state, supermajority in the House and Senate. I represent a constituency that doesn't want that filth in Oklahoma. We are a religious state. We are going to fight to keep that filth out of the state of Oklahoma, because we're a Christian state, we're a moral state.
Sarah, as you said, there is outrage after those comments, but as you heard in that clip, there was also applause after that comment. Kathy Cott said that she was shocked. She left the event immediately. CNN has reached out to Senator Tom Woods, but we have not yet.
Yeah, he said it. We're going to keep that filth out of our state because we are a Christian state. We are a moral state, and we're going to keep that filth out of our state. That's how it sounds. Again, he called the LGBTQ plus community filth. And it amazes me. We are a Christian, and it's the same Christians. I call them nationalists. I call them confused nationalists. Those aren't Christians. Those are confused nationalists. Because how is a religion that says love everybody, but yet at the same time you kind of forget the fact that, well, everybody. At the same time, he sat there and said, we want to keep this filth out of our state. And I keep saying the whole entire time, ooh, if I was an LGBTQ plus person in that man's state, and you need my vote and the votes of others who basically are like me, it's going to be a long election period for you. But that just goes to show you about the GOP. The GOP at this point have no problem saying exactly what they feel right now. Why? Could they have been empowered by a certain failed president? Yes, possibly. But at the same time, think about that for a second, that they are literally calling them out in the same sense how Donald Trump said, I can only see the black ones. How you have so many GOP saying, oh, well, you have so many GOP people watching Fox News as a man sits there and says, oh, black people love Trump because black people love sneakers. Black people love mugshots. And it's amazing to me. These are the same people that'll turn around and when you call them out on it, they act like the victim. There is nothing of moral stature to sit there and call LGBTQ plus filth. If somebody is different than you, then live it. Okay. Let them live. What about their lifestyle is bothering you that goddamn bad? Except the fact that all I can think of is obsession. The party of family values is also the same party that has mistresses out of nowhere, gay lovers out of nowhere, or gay lovers, mistresses, and also love children. Sometimes it's all three. But it's always been Republicans. So whenever a Democrat has a scandal, Fox News and them have to jump on it. Why? Because their fair and balanced is not so fair and balanced. It's fair and bullshit. But when it comes to Republicans, and I said this before, it is amazing to me when you look at presidential candidates, a black person wanted to get the Republican nomination. That alone is laughable in existence. A woman wanted to get the Republican presidential nomination. That should have been a long shot from Jump Street. So who do you have left? Exactly what the face of the Republican Party is. Grumpy old white men who are not used to being the minority and are trying to fight it with everything in their being. That's what you're dealing with right now. But again, LGBTQ plus, people of color, women, I'm I'm sure if you're not trying to shoot yourself in the foot, you're not going to vote conservative. That's all I'm saying. But a couple more stories, guys, we get to our feel good news of the week. Wendy's has decided that, you know what, we're going to test something out there about prices, and we're going to treat it like Uber. Not sure about this, Wendy's. Not sure.
Maybe a Frosty would hit the spot. Well, depending on the time of your craving and when that hits, it may be a little more expensive. Wendy's, one of the biggest fast food chains in the country, is testing surge pricing. So your burger during peak lunchtime may cost more than late at night or mid-afternoon. Let's bring in our Alexis Christophorus. Don't know if you're a Wendy's fan or not. We'll have to discuss that later. But why don't you break down for us what's going on? Why are they doing this?
Well, I've had a Wendy's burger in my day, Kira. Absolutely. I think it's going to be really interesting to see if customers are ready for this change. They're basically taking a page out of the Uber and Lyft book with this, price surging, meaning that pricing is now going to be based on things like time of day, the location of the restaurant, demand, even the weather. They're pouring about $20 million into what they call dynamic digital menu boards that will be updating menu items and their pricing in real time. Some economists say, people might not be ready for this yet. I saw on social media lots of folks were outraged already, saying it sounds more like price gouging. To me, it seems like people at lunchtime would be the biggest losers. That's one of their big money makers. It's a big time for them. And if it's really crowded, are you really going to want to pay a few dollars more for the same burger you could get, maybe an hour later?
Who exactly decides that, though? Maybe everybody's going to be having a hamburger at 9 a.m.
I know. They might start changing the way we eat our fast food. I don't know. But, they're saying McDonald's and Burger King, if this goes well at Wendy's, they could be doing the same thing in the not too distant future.
All right. Well, let's talk about Macy's.
Okay, so we're going to stop it right there for a second because Macy's is basically cutting jobs. Let's be honest. At this point, every business is going to say, we're going to cite a smart business decision and lose jobs, and yet wonder why corporate loyalty is bullshit. But anyway, to Wendy's, who has sat there and said, you know what, guys, we're going to base our surge pricing on the time of day and the people, and, if you really want a burger. Wendy's, as a fan of you since the Biggie fries, since the yellow and red, since you actually gave me burgers that were worth eating, Wendy's, you should learn from McDonald's. McDonald's CEO just a few weeks ago sat there and said, you know what? The price of food is high, but thankful all of you complained that we're going to do something about it. While a Big Mac in some places, while a meal in some places for McDonald's is $15, while sometimes hash browns are $3. And of course, the dollar menu is non-existent. McDonald's has a price problem because, again, they're still paying workers less than $15 an hour. So the whole thing about, if we pay workers more, then our prices go up is a moot argument. Wendy's is basically trying to do the Uber model into their food. Not a great idea because, number one, if prices do go up on fast food, nobody should be eating it anyway, personally. I mean, I'm going to be honest. If you're doing surge prices on a Wendy's double or triple combo, I can literally go to the store and make my own hamburgers and french fries. I see no point in going to Wendy's. At the same time, I'm surprised Wendy's stock didn't take a hit in this, because they did come back later and sit there and say, well, we are rolling out with something new, but it was twisted by the media about the pricing. Sure, the media has an issue with something that you're reporting, because Wendy's is basically owned by an investment group. And let's be honest, what do investment groups are usually known for? Trying to squeeze as much money out of the individual as humanly possible. That's why Wendy's is walking back their comments. I'm just saying. But the other side of this, guys, I want to get to before we get to our feel good segment is that not only are we getting great news, even though this is before the good news segment, especially if you're in college, because again, with college and student loan debts, getting relief is helpful, especially in the medical field. Those in the medical field, I can only imagine what their student loans are like. Well, a certain widow who actually received quite the amount of money is trying to relieve that burden for a certain group of individuals.
August this year, the Albert Einstein College of Medicine will be tuition free.
Oh, could you imagine? Absolutely amazing. That was a moment that Ruth Gottesman changed lives forever with her $1 billion history-making gift. An amazing moment for students in New York against the backdrop of another education development. President Biden announcing he's forgiving $1.2 billion in student loan debt, affecting almost 153,000 borrowers.
And this comes after the president's initial plan to cancel $400 billion in student debt was struck down by the Supreme Court last summer. Here to discuss is U.S. Secretary of Education, Dr. Miguel Cardona. Thanks so much for being with us.
Great to be with you. Good afternoon.
So let's start with the big question on a lot of people's minds. Who qualifies for this?
Well, we're excited about the SAVE plan, which we know is going to make college much more affordable across the country. But as was mentioned, the president, we announced last week 153,000 borrowers having over $1 billion in debt relief. Who qualifies for this? Folks who took out a loan of $12,000 or less and have been paying it for 10 years. Now, most of these folks, 75% of them, are people that qualify for Pell Grants. So these are people that are lower income and, are trying to make ends meet. So we're really happy that we can target those folks as well.
Mr. Secretary, this weekend on GMA, you said that there will be more relief in sight in the near future. Tell us about it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Look, I want to be very clear. What we're announcing last week and what we're fighting for is making higher education more affordable and more accessible. That's the bottom line. When the president hired me, he made it very clear to me, we have to fix a broken system. We've provided over $138 billion in debt relief from day one. That's more than any other administration combined. And we're going to continue to announce public service loan forgiveness. We're going to continue to announce the adjustments for the income-driven repayment plan. And then the SAVE plan, which is, as I said, a new feature under the president's administration that makes college more affordable, will also be announcing additional loan forgiveness for those who have been paying over 10 years.
So again, I'm not against this, guys, because again, I want to cover the first part where a lot of students are really going to be getting a debt-free education, and good for them, especially in the medical field, because we definitely need more doctors, nurses, surgical technicians, and those in the medical care field. We definitely need you guys desperately. And of course, we did have the Secretary of Education, Dr. Cardona himself, did talk about the fact that yes, that more relief is coming. Again, I have sat there and said in this podcast, guys, I get what Biden is trying to do. Biden, again, to his detriment, didn't say he was wiping out student loan debt entirely. He did try to come with a plan that would wipe $10,000 to $20,000 out for every student. Because of two idiots that decided to do a lawsuit, it did go to Supreme Court. The Supreme Court sat there and said the president does not have the ability to forgive all student loan debt. So he has been going the other way. He has been sitting there saying if you're in the public service area, that, of course, if you do have a public self-loan, that can be forgiven. If you went to a college that falsely advertised it, especially for-profit colleges, those loans are forgiven. If you fall under a SAVE program or income debt repayment plans, those were forgiven. Because, again, if you've been paying for 10 plus years, which is still mystifying to me, that it takes 10 years of payments, which mostly are interest, to actually get your debt removed. 10 years. Do not get me wrong. I understand what Biden's trying to do within legal limits, but I have sat there and said this. For the fact that student loan debt is at 1.7 trillion and more, we can forgive the entire student loan debt. Because again, guys, for all those who don't know, in the credit game, student loan debt does go into your debt profit portfolio. It makes it hard to get a car. It makes it harder to get a loan. It makes it hard to get a home loan. It makes it hard to get a good, decent job because jobs look at your credit reports too. If you have a lot of debt, you can be seen as a risk. So I get the fact that what the Biden administration is trying to do, it can do more. The reason why I say it can do more, there's this little crappy program called the Paycheck Protection Program that, again, the PPP loan, that loan that gave out billions actually, gave out billions to corporations, rich people, and those with small businesses, to the tune of $780 billion. $780 billion is what that program called for. And I'll keep responding to this fact. $780 billion was what that program costed. The government forgave $757 billion. Nearly 96% of the actual program itself was forgiven. But the businesses, those rich folks, the corporations got their loans forgiven, they didn't have to pay because the American taxpayer did. And my thing is, if I'm going to be paying for someone else's debt, I'd rather be paying a student loan debt, to where someone out there doesn't have to worry about this debt anymore and they can be a productive citizen and live their life, versus a corporation or a rich person who has the means to pay the debt, who has the means to pay the loan themselves, but chose not to. So again, I will keep pointing this out. Biden can do more. I appreciate what Biden is doing, but he can always do more. Hence, go progressive and not be moderate. But we're going to go move on to our feel good segment, guys, because usually how the Frack We Got Here, we usually cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom. Sometimes use faith in humanity, but hey, it's hump day. Tomorrow is Thursday, which is Friday. Tomorrow is Thursday, which is one day closer to Friday. And we will leave you guys out some good vibrations again with Black History Month. Although here on this podcast and wherever we go, it is definitely Black 365. Forget the fact that we are in a leap year. But I did want to cover this, guys, because again, Black history is U.S. history, because there are those out there that try to whitewash it. But as more stories come out about our history, especially in the world of espionage and spycraft, it makes me wonder why these aren't movies. But I digress.
They clandestinely relayed messages across enemy lines. They reported intel to allies in battle. They even commandeered enemy vessels. And they always followed an African-American proverb that truly defined their contribution to spy work. Every shut-eye ain't sleep. We are talking about the unsung heroes of espionage, Black agents defending our freedom from the front lines, secretly operating behind the scenes of every military conflict. And as we celebrate Black History Month, we celebrate these African Americans in espionage through a special exhibit now showing at the world-renowned International Spy Museum right here in our nation's capital. Joining us now, two of my favorite former spies, Colonel Chris Costa, Executive Director of the International Spy Museum, along with Daryl Blocker, former CIA Senior Field Operative and ABC News contributor. Daryl is also featured in this exhibit. And Daryl, let me start with you. You know, I've known you for some time now, and I don't think I've ever really gotten the backstory of what inspired you to pursue espionage.
I think it was a combination of things. I was a Cub Scout. I was a Boy Scout. I was ROTC in high school and college, but mostly I was curious. And there's something about wanting to know more in depth about what what you're looking at. So I think it was just a natural, a marriage of my interest: philosophy, religion, cultures, geography, and the military. Of course, I grew up in a military family, and I was a military officer before I became a CIA officer.
Did you have a Black hero in the field of spy work?
Honestly, Harriet Tubman. She ran a spy network that is close to the most impressive thing that has ever been done in the history of espionage, under more dire circumstances and under more threats than probably anything that existed even to this very moment. So yeah, Harriet Tubman.
our conductor on the Underground Railroad, and she's featured, of course, within this exhibit. Quite the icon. And Chris, you are an intel officer. You know how valuable this work is. Let's talk about some of the patriots that you are featuring within this exhibit, in addition to Harriet Tubman and our Daryl Blocker. Tell us about James Lafayette.
So James Lafayette was an enslaved man in Virginia. He spied for the American cause. So he was a patriot during the American Revolution. At the behest of France's Marquis de Lafayette, I think I said that with a bit of a French accent, but Lafayette oversaw the network, and we found out years later through fragments in history that James Lafayette, who took the name of the Marquis, was spying behind British lines, and only fragments from history allowed us to piece together that story. It is a fascinating story that James no doubt risked his life as a forager, sneaking behind British lines. Of course, we outspied the British during the American Revolution, and I love that story.
And Daryl, one of my favorite stories and spies, besides you, of course, Josephine Baker, Nazi guard, so enamored of this singer known as the Black Pearl. I mean, she could slip across enemy lines with such ease.
And what she did with her music was genius. So she was able to get secrets out by writing crib notes on her sheet music that, you know, no German or anyone would look at that and say, oh, she's passing secrets. But she was a French speaker. She was a Black woman who was way before her time. But I didn't learn about her involvement in espionage until I joined the agency myself.
Final thought, Daryl, why must we not forget these Black spies and spy masters?
I think it's important to recognize that everybody that's in our nation today has always contributed throughout, from the very beginning to this day. And if we look at the intelligence world right now, our Secretary of Defense is a Black American. Their chairman of the Joint Chiefs is a Black American. Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, a Black American. Our White House Cyber Director, Harry Coker. Linda Thomas Greenfield, our top diplomat. And of course, there are my mentor, who is also on the Spy Museum board, Mel Gamble, a man amongst men and one of my heroes.
Well, you both know that both of you are two of my biggest heroes, and I'm so glad we were able to highlight this exhibit and have both of you on. Daryl, Chris, thank you so much.
And again, that's pretty cool. The fact, again, when I talk about our history, guys, there is quite the amount of history. And the fact that, again, for all this, especially in the world of spycraft, how is this not a movie or movies? It should be, because Hollywood has no original ideas left. But anyway, that's going to do it for this podcast, guys. I do thank you all for liking, for watching, for letting the people know this is live. I certainly appreciate that. Some shameless plugging before we do get out of here, guys. I do always want to shout out my boy Vaughn, BigBZA on social media. Definitely check him out, BigBZA and his YouTube page for music, for beats. But definitely check him out as he has several things there. Very good dude, high quality work. Check him out. You'll be very much pleased. As for myself, guys, you can find me Black_Spartan615 on the socials, as I usually do reviews on everything, including gym stuff, because, hey, I like to stay in shape. At the same time, guys, link at the bottom. I'll make that a little bit bigger for you guys to see. If you copy and paste that link into your browser, link to my link tree, that's the YouTube and Facebook groups for all of our podcasts. How the Frack We Got Here get bitten off those podcasts. If you definitely want to check them out, they can be found on Instagram or YouTube or Facebook. How the Frack We Got Here, of course, the show that you're watching now. Get Bit Podcast, my video game podcast, which is every Friday at 7 p.m. And, of course, the Off Limits Podcast, which we are bringing back. I don't know when we'll have new episodes of that, but we're definitely bringing that back. But definitely check all that out, guys. We cannot do this without you. Definitely like, share, subscribe, tell people about it. I do love the fact that people come up to me and tell me, I watch your show. I really appreciate it. Cool. Tell a friend and tell a friend. That's all I ask. And, of course, guys, before I do get out of here, I do want to shout out blurredstation.com. Again, guys, if you've been watching my feed, we have been announcing that we are definitely announcing the fact that we have brought on Michael Jai White and his wife as co-producers onto this. So Blurred Station is definitely changing the game. We are trying to show that we can do something for people, for blurs of color, for people of color, and really have something it's entertaining as Netflix, except for the fact we got to deal with the prices. It's still $10.99 a month to sign up with it, guys. If you want to, please, oh please, when you go to the Join Now button, select the Blurred's Eye View Affinity membership. From there, guys, you can select any influence partner there. Again, we would all appreciate it. But once you select that, guys, select the Affinity membership. It's $10.99. After 36 months of paying $10.99, you do get equity in the company, which means that you can own a piece of Blurred Station. I don't know about you, but that sounds sweet to me, because if you try to get a piece of Netflix or Amazon Prime or Hulu or things of that nature, you do have to pay an assload amount of money just to be able to put your foot in the door. Whereas 36 months at $10.99 seems like a sweet deal to me. Definitely check out blurredstation.com. Now, as we wrap this up, guys, I keep saying this because we are in a presidential nomination season. I cannot stress this enough. Get to know the candidates, not just at the federal level, but the local level. And again, if you don't like your choices, which a lot of people do say, I don't like my choices, there's a third option. You can support a candidate that you believe that needs to get the spotlight put on him or her. Help them out. Be a ground walker. Actually tell people about them. Share them through the socials. Or you can run for yourself. There are plenty of websites out there that can show you how to run for office in your city, in your state, if you choose to take on public service. But again, saying that there are no options is saying that it's an excuse not to do anything. We can no longer not be active. We must be active. We must be aware, because if we don't, then we may actually get another year of Trump. And I'm sorry, we barely survived 4 years of Trump. Do you really want to see 4 more years of it? But that being said, guys, last thing to say about how Frack We Got Here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are simply trying to give you all the information, but allow you to make up your own mind. But we do provide a logical perspective that goes along with it. We do better as a society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now that we should have done back then. Like electing our first Black woman to the Supreme Court, electing our first Black woman to the Federal Board of Governors, electing our first Black woman to be a national cybersecurity advisor. All great things. When we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. That's what we keep asking ourselves. Why does everything go up on our paycheck? Why are we electing different politicians but still the same old gang in Congress? And most importantly, how the Frack We Got Here. Thank you all for watching, guys. Again, be informed, take action, take care of yourselves and each other, and we will all get through this. Peace.